This is Sam Bushman
And Dan Morrison.
for Candid Gaming's coverage of Comic-Con 2010. Well, the first thing I saw that was kind of interesting today at Comic-Con was Marvel Interactive and their coverage of their new software coming out. They announced a few new things. Firstly, they announced a few new Little Big Planet costumes coming. These are going to be Marvel character themed, and we're looking at seeing one for Invisible Woman, one for Rogue, one for Captain America, one for Wolverine, as well as seeing a new one for Venom, which looked kind of cute because Venom's mouth kind of opened up and you could see Sackboy's eyes coming out of the mouth.
That's very interesting. I personally wasn't there to see this, so I really am hoping to see some really cool things. Now, are these going to work with Little Big Planet 2?
I'm not sure they didn't mention anything about that, but they did say they're going to include more content for level design. Try and make it more Marvel themed. But as well as that, they also start talking about some of their IP software, one being Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. This game is rather notable by bringing in multiple Spider-Man universes into a single game. And they also announced the fourth universe being the Ultimate Universe, where you play Spider-Man in the black suit. The other three being the Amazing Spider-Man universe, which is your classic Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099, which is a futuristic Spider-Man that uses guns and fights futuristic villains, Noir Spider-Man, which is really interesting because it uses a film noir style with soft shadows, lots of black and whites. Spider-Man himself accentuates his eyes with circular lights coming out, and they said the gameplay is going to match his style with overall stealth gameplay. And like I said, the Ultimate. And they also... Oh, I'm sorry.
It sounds very interesting. I really personally don't follow Spider-Man, but I'm intrigued by the amount of different aspects they're showing a similar person.
Yeah. And on top of this, they even talked about some of the voice actors they're coming out with. All four Spider-Man are featuring voice actors from either current or past cartoons, and narrating, they have Stan Lee doing narration. Personally, I was a fan of the Super Friends cartoon from the 80s, and I really enjoyed listening to Stan Lee talk about narrative and bringing the story along. He has that very kind of storyteller voice, and I can't wait to see that in the game.
That sounds like a very promising thing, and I hope to see it. Is there a date that was released with that?
Actually, they did not mention a release date. I imagine a lot of their software's coming out fall 2011, so this might be then, or it might even come out fall 2010, because stuff looked like it was fairly well along. Along with that, they also talked about some of the villains quickly. In the Ultimate Universe, you're looking at facing Carnage and Deadpool. In the Amazing Universe, you're facing Juggernaut, among other guys. In 2099, you're facing a futuristic, modified version of Hobgoblin. And in Noir, they're bringing in Hammerhead, which is a Spider-Man villain which is mostly notable for being kind of a gangster type. And this will match extremely well with the Noir setting. And also with each Spider-Man in the new dimension, they'll have their own special abilities as well as a set core abilities that make Spider-Man Spider-Man.
This definitely sounds like it's going to be truly unique. I'm really hoping to see some more footage. I don't know if you did, but it really sounds intriguing to me.
Yeah, and the gameplay overall is your standard third-party beat-em-up. And beyond that, Marvel also talked about a couple games that are using their Marvel Superhero Squad franchise, which is a children's cartoon franchise. First, they've got a multiplayer local disc-based game, which plays a lot like Lego Star Wars or Lego Indiana Jones. You choose your little mini version of your hero. You run around environments solving flip-switch puzzles, beating up enemies. And they've also got an MMO coming out, which uses the same characters, and each player can go online, collect these superheroes, have their own little private helicopter area, and manage them and make squads and fight each other or fight environment.
I've seen a little bit of this before, and it does look interesting. It kind of, I don't know, skews the characters and looks like a little bit weird, but I do see that it's a little more accommodating to children and to a wider fan base, so I can see where there's some draw with it.
Yeah, and definitely I'm curious about the gameplay for the disc-based game, because of the fact it does emulate Lego Star Wars and Lego Indiana Jones. Those are very fun for multiplayer, and I'm going to at least run it and try it. Beyond that, they also talked a little bit about Marvel vs. Capcom 3, mostly about adding a couple new characters. It looked very much like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and 1. They are using a 3D graphics engine, which is really impressive. They're going away from the sprite-based graphics. But you're still getting your 3 vs. 3 2D crazy beat-em-up with elaborate finishing moves, team-based attacks. They also said they are working on bringing more of the comic book themes into the game. You had comic book characters in the past game, but they talked about how customers had complained that the characters didn't seem to act like they did in the comic books. The dialogue wasn't right, the way they moved wasn't right. So they're trying to address some of that, so it's less of a Japanese fighting game and more like a genuine comic book game with Japanese characters in it.
That sounds a lot more promising. Now, I was skeptical about you going from sprite-based to 3D, But after seeing how it's been done in Street Fighter 4, I believe it's a very proven design, and it could perfectly work with anything you would actually imagine it to. So it's no longer going to be a Tekken. You could do very competent 3D and 2D. So hopefully this will be promising.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the graphics, they're not hard-edged. They still have that kind of drawn feel using subtle cell shading, and that's even something they use in Street Fighter 4. Also, we had the opportunity of seeing some really interesting footage on Twisted Metal, a new one coming out. What did you think of it, firstly?
I thought it was really good. They really showed us a developer standpoint of the current progress of this game. This game ain't coming out to 2011, but they still showed us a lot of interesting footage and a lot of interesting things that have gone on with this, including a skyscraper level, which Twisted Metal is very well known for, and a few interesting ideas on how they're going to change the gameplay and some of the new game modes they're going to have in this new game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how in past Twisted Metals it was all about deathmatch. You get split screen multiplayer and everyone shoots at each other. But in this new Twisted Metal, they're talking about having King of the Hill modes. They're having this gang-based take the gang leader from the other guys into some hazardous environment, shoot him on a rocket or something. It's very much team-oriented. And they said split screen for local and online multiplayer, and I was really appreciative
Not
of
only that, it was 2 to 4 players split screen, which is amazing, because I haven't had 4-player split screen since the N64.
Yeah, it's been a long time to say the least. And along with that, having David Jaffe up there give his usual personality for his presentation, talk about his pre-release content, even showing us a completely unfinished level of a desert race on a very long track, showed his devotion to fans, and I believe that's reflected in the game design. They're saying, if you like Twisted Metal, you're going to love this game.
They also are very much stylizing the cinematics of this game. They really explain how they're changing the cinematics from what the original was, which was like kind of like just strut video. And personally, it seemed like Jaffe really didn't like that idea, and now he's going with this idea, which is a more stylized, more like Sin City, as he explained it, to go ahead and make the stylized cinematics in this game. There's going to be multiple endings with the multiple factions, and it definitely looks like an extremely polished and really promising game for this, if you like Twisted Metal, and I think it'll get some more fans who've never even heard of this.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it's a very stylized look. I'm really interested to see full motion video and a cinematic in a modern game, because that's something that's been long abandoned since the late 90s. Probably the most humorous part about the entire talk is someone had asked whether PlayStation Move is going to be supported. He had mentioned that it won't be, and the entire room applauded.
Yeah, as much as we like kind of the Move for certain things, in a racing game, seriously, if you've ever tried to play like Mario Kart Racing with this like Wii controller, you could easily understand that the Move is not a competent controller for racing games or anything of this genre. And it's very nice to see they're not trying to gimmick this in there. The 3D could be interesting, but they did not announce that. And you know what? If they could go ahead and make a very promising, strong 2D game with 4-player split screen, I'd rather have that than any kind of 3D or Move technologies. It really seemed like they were going for the main audience.
Yeah, each seat play is ultimately looking like it's playing off the design sensibilities of the developers and saying, you know, we've been making games for 10, 15 years collectively in the industry. We want to bring some of that stuff back into games with the modern console, and I'm going to keep an eye on them now. Twisted Metal is looking promising. It's keeping to its roots. What could they do next? I don't know. And I especially can't wait to see what games we find tomorrow.